religious systems. Let me put it this way. If Jesus is correct, then Muhammad, Buddha are wrong. Period. If Jesus is incorrect, then Christians are wrong. Period. People in our cultural milieu might wish that this were not the case, but wishing does not make it so. To dismiss the truth claims of Jesus as self-evidently wrong because his statements offend cultural sensibilities is not an argument against those truth claims. It's just a complaint. We must deal with the Bible's unique claims to be the Word of God. The truth contained in Scriptures, it's not the product of naked religious experience or human intellectual construction. Rather, it's revealed by God. It's what it claims to be. In answer to the pluralists, we can know things of this wonderful and mysterious God precisely and only because God has revealed them to us through His Word and most fully through His Son, the Lord Jesus Christ. True knowledge of God, although not exhaustive knowledge, is possible because of Jesus' revelatory word. You have to deal with Jesus, what He said, what He did, before you can dismiss Him as just another wise spiritual teacher who provided some insight into God. Who Jesus is and what He said have controlling influence over one's approach to Christianity and other religions. And when Jesus' claims are analyzed, I'm confident you'll find that they are different. Now, this doesn't automatically mean that they're superior. That'll have to wait for another discussion that must surely follow. But we ought to allow Orthodox Christianity to be heard at this point. Jesus Christ is seen by Christians to be different to other religious teachers. The question is, on what is that distinctiveness grounded? How is it expressed? What are its consequences? If Jesus Christ is merely an extremely spiritual person with extraordinary ability to see and hear God, then the redemptive story chronicled in the Bible unravels. And the church has been guilty of perpetrating an unforgivable hoax. I readily admit that. Orthodox Christianity, though, does not fit into a pluralistic scheme. It cannot and retain even a semblance of its essence. Jesus requires that it close with Him. That you answer the question He asked His disciples, what about you? Who do you say that I am? Peter gave the answer that must ultimately be given. You're the Christ, the Son of the living God.
Our second speaker for the evening is Dr. Okulam. Frodo Okulam obtained her doctorate in ministry from San Francisco Theological Seminary at Marylhurst University. Since 2000, she has been an assistant professor with the Women's Studies Department at Portland State University. She is the author of The Julian Mystique, Her Life and Teachings. She has a broad spiritual background that embraces many traditions and centers on female divine imagery and women's experiences. She is the founder and coordinator of an eclectic women's spirituality group called the Sister Spirits. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Okulam.
My name is Frodo. First of all, I'm going to address that because Gary said people are going to want to know. And actually, it's wonderful. I didn't know about the Socratic Club. About who founded it and all that till I got here and read the brochure. And it said that it was founded by C.S. Lewis. So since my name is Frodo, I have something in common with your club. Because C.S. Lewis and J.R.R. Tolkien were best friends. And in fact, C.S. Lewis owes his faith to conversations with Tolkien. Although he chose a slightly different path of Christianity than Tolkien did. But it was through conversations with Tolkien that he found his faith. And that's where I get my name. Started out as a nickname when I was at camp. So now it's my legal name. Okulam means the sound of the sea in Chinook. I'm just learning the Chinook jargon, Chinook Wawa. But I liked the word and the meaning and picked it up when I was in about the 4th grade. So.
Excuse me, could we have the microphone a little louder?
Or I need to move it up.
Maybe you need to move it up.
Notice that
Let's
side
try
is
this.
weak, this side is strong.
Okay.
Maybe the center of your mic a little more.
Okay.
It was better.
Oh, you know what? Well, I wonder if I could clip it to the shirt. Let's try that. You have to do it with your left hand. How's this? Is that better? Okay. Good. Then when I move around, I won't move away from the mic. When I was asked to speak about are there many paths to God, it occurred to me, my first answer was, yes, there are many religions. End of talk. But I didn't think that was what was wanted. And I almost turned it down, although this is the second time Gary's asked me, but I didn't want to be like the gubernatorial candidates. So I said yes. Debate format, pro and con, isn't really where I live. I live in the discussion and in the both and realm. So this is unfamiliar and difficult, so correct me if I start going down a different path. First of all, of course, I get to critique the question. And now that I see who you are, it makes more sense why the question is what it is. Because the first thing I noticed about that question is that it's really, are there many valid paths to God? Because, as Todd already said, there are many paths out there saying that they're the way to union with the divine or absolute. Notice that I said the divine or absolute. The question as it's phrased also presupposes monotheism. If you say, are there many paths to God, to someone who is a polytheist of any kind, they're going to say, well, which one? What do you mean? The faiths that don't have that kind of a concept of the absolute would say. And so already it's leaving a lot of the paths out of the question by phrasing the question in that way. But if you are all about talking about Christianity in relation to the other traditions, it makes sense to begin with a monotheist question. So now I understand that. That's great. What I just did illustrates that even the way you frame the question, but also the way you approach the question, depends on your point of view. It totally depends on your point of view. And in fact, we used to imagine that there's an empirical stance somewhere where you could speak as an uninterested observer. And science has now shown that the observer affects the experiment, even in the scientific realm. So who you are, your life experience, the life experiences of the people you meet, where you live, what you studied, where you studied it, all of that affects how you see things. It affects especially how you approach a question of belief or faith, such as this one. So, given that we're in a society that's mostly Christian, I think we have some common ground to approach the question in that. But we also, as Todd also said, we also live in a pluralistic society where there are many religions and those who don't see their experience in terms of religion. So the answer, of course, to that question, are there many paths? Yes, there are many different religions, and each has its own history and prehistory, and each is appropriate to its cultural origins, and all are relevant to some people today. And every religion is seen as a valid path to the divine by its adherents, or to the absolute if they don't see things in terms of the divine. The people who follow each tradition believe that it is the correct path. This is the right way. This is the way that makes sense to me, and therefore I follow it. And each religion has its particular wisdom, and they all address common themes. They all address the great mysteries of life. And each one aims to produce positive effects on its adherents and in the world. And every religion contains a prescription for union with the absolute or ultimate, and each one recognizes the richness and the limitations of human experience. Every religion has some common basic ethics, and those end up sounding really similar. I feel like there's feedback coming from this. Are you hearing that out there? Sorry about that. Perhaps I should speak slowly and not move my head. I'm not very good at that. Also, bear with my throat. I've had pneumonia. I'm recovering. Got it in July, so don't worry. It's been a long time. But I couldn't resist looking up, and I had a great time playing, looking up what each tradition teaches about all these things that I see that all these common questions about human experience. And that's what I could go on forever telling you what all I found about all the traditions. So we're going to have to rein me in at some point on that. But excuse me. can hear the cough, unfortunately. Each religion has some common basic ethics, and each has some form of golden rule. So, who remembers what the golden rule is? Just call it out. Okay. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Not before they do unto you. Because there's a lot of different versions of that out there now. But as you would have them do unto you. In Hinduism, there's the karmic law. And I found a quote actually it was one of the quotes that Gandhi held as a principle, as a Hindu. The truly noble know that all humans are one, and return with gladness good for evil done. So that's a very similar idea, if not the same idea, as the Golden Rule. Buddhism's basic ethics are found in the Eightfold Path. And I wrote down, you could translate this different ways, but just in case, the Eightfold Path doesn't really say anything unless you know something about Buddhism. So right understanding, right thought, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, right concentration. Okay, Buddhists think they have the right path, don't they? And compassion is really, I think, a hallmark of Buddhism as well. And the quote that I found on that, if a mother cares for her only son all her days, so toward all living things a person's mind should be embracing. So you treat everyone as though they were your dearest child. In paganism, the ethic is the Wiccan Rede, as long as you harm none, do as you will. That almost sounds like you could do what you want. Not. If you have to think about you can't harm anyone, you can't harm yourself, you can't harm another person, you can't harm anything in the ecosystem, you really are limited in what you can do if you're very careful about that law. In Judaism, of course, it's the law, the whole of the law. And the golden rule really comes right out of Leviticus. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. That is really the core of the golden rule. And in Christianity, of course, we have the golden rule, but I think even more than that, the new commandment that Jesus gave us, love one another as I have loved you, is really the core of Christian ethics. In Islam, it's submission to God. All humanity is one family. Repel evil with what is good, then you shall find your former enemy like a close, affectionate friend. So those are some statements from the traditions. I have to pick and choose traditions. I didn't put them all under each question, each category, because, then we'd be here, we really would be here all night, and you can't ever cover them all even then. One of my friends, when I said, well, the question is, are there many paths to God? Said, well, each person has their own path to God. And so, we could come from that point of view, too, and say, yes, each person has their own. But I'm coming from what religious pluralists generally begin with, which is the common ground between all the religions. This is not my field of study. So I asked a friend of mine who it is one of her fields of study, and she said, well, begin with the common ground between the traditions. So I'm following her advice and doing that. For those ethical laws or rules, every tradition also has some sort of reason for doing that. In other words, this is the consequences part of love your neighbor as yourself. In paganism, it's the threefold law. What you do comes back to you threefold. Are you going to do anything that's harmful? No, not if you're going to get it 3 times back. In Christianity and in Islam, we face judgment. We really do face judgment on our acts. And in indigenous traditions around the world, we seek harmony between all beings. And there's all different ways. Each tradition has their own way that they recommend for that, but it's really about living in harmony with others and with nature and with all the relations.